It was a murder that shocked St. Louis.
There were shocks and surprises from beginning to end.
A teenage girl brutally stabbed to death by her own parents.
It didn't have to happen. Zane, I'd say, was a monster.
And the FBI with the murder caught on audio.
Tina can now be heard moaning as her father says, "Quiet, my little one. Die, my daughter, die."
It's 15 minutes of horror.
She was a bright teenage girl with a life full of promise. While she was in pursuit of independence, her own family was plotting her murder. I'm Justina Cornell, and this is Honor Killing, a Five on Your Side original production. The year was 1989. Palestine Issa, also known as Tina, lived in St. Louis with her parents.
She was a girl without a country. She had lived in the West Bank. She'd lived in Puerto Rico. She lived in her mother's homeland, Brazil. And all she wanted to do was be an American girl.
She was the youngest of 7 siblings at just 16 and a bright student at Roosevelt High School.
She was a fine young lady and the kind of child that any parent should be very proud to have.
She was an honors student, National Honor Society. She was beloved. There's no picture of her where she isn't smiling or laughing, and that's the way everybody remembered her.
She had big dreams of one day leaving home and going to college.
She wanted to be an airline pilot.
Those dreams cut short on November 6, 1989.
She had something that she was striving for, and it was just ended.
St. Louis police responded to a call early that Monday morning to the family's apartment on Delore Street in South St. Louis. At the scene, her father telling officers he stabbed his daughter in self-defense after an argument over money.
Zane said during the argument, Palestina went back to the kitchen. He thought to get a glass of water. Instead, she brought out a knife. Zane said Palestina lunged at him, and in the struggle, he stabbed her.
What, did he have a little nick on his finger like I get cooking? Yeah. Not defensive wounds.
Her own mother backing that story, but history and audio tapes from the FBI tell a very different one.
They practiced what their alibi was going to be, their story was going to be after the murder, before the murder.
Tina's father, Zane, was from the Middle East, a Palestinian with U.S. citizenship.
Zane was born in 1931 in the West Bank. Zane moves around, and at one point he goes to Brazil, and he goes into a cafe, a friend had told him, and he sees Maria. Within 1 week, they were engaged and married.
Zane and his wife Maria eventually built a life in St. Louis, running a family store called Alliance Market on Shaw Boulevard, now known as Shaw Market.
She thought Zane looked like a hard worker, which was meaning a good provider.
A family that appeared to be living the American dream, and a daughter with a dream that was too American.
Tina was not acting the way they wanted her to act. She was enjoying being American.
She didn't rebel by our standards until she just started growing up.
Tina had just started a new job and she had a black boyfriend, but her family didn't approve of either one.
There were multiple different ideas that she had that they did not like. Number one, at that time, she was dating an African-American gentleman.
Her parents would yell and scream racial epithets at him.
Tina returned home late at night after working her very first shift at a local Wendy's.
They argued. He said he was angry about her staying out late and the fact that she was working at a fast food restaurant against his wishes.
When Tina walked in, she had left a note on the television that she had started a job at Wendy's, and it started at this time, and she'd be home when her shift ended at 11:30. And that set them off.
The motive clearly seemed to be that she was not going to be controlled.
During the struggle, a telephone was knocked off the hook. That phone containing a bug planted by the FBI recording the murder.
The recordings of the murder are horrific. It's very disturbing. It's very hard to listen to. It is loud, it is violent, and it is long. Once you think it's over, there's this other blood-curdling scream, and she's moaning and groaning again and again, and he's saying, "Die, daughter, die, die, daughter, die."
While she's writhing on the floor, her father's standing over her screaming, "Die, my daughter, die." And this was the girl that was her father's pet, the apple of his eye. But when she started becoming her own person, he couldn't take it.
Tina was stabbed several times. Maria held down her daughter, and Zane stabbed her to death, while Tina begged her mother for help.
She's saying, "Mother, mother, please help me, mother." And she says something like, "What help?" and then calls her name.
It is hard to imagine how she held. I mean, I think this is sort of beyond my psychological level.
Before her death, Tina reported child abuse to both school and state officials.
We didn't have the protective laws that we have now. Tina confided in a teacher.
At the time, it didn't make sense to me, and I was concerned about why things were so unusual.
She confided in her friends, so her best friend knew, her boyfriend knew, the kids at school knew, so she herself called the child abuse hotline, and she got the Lemon. And the Lemon came out and interviewed her where she's sitting between her parents. I mean, and he was Southern, and he sympathized with the parents because his ex-wife had married a black man. Did he ever try and deal with Tina alone? No. Did he ever go investigate at the school? No. What the child abuse hotline starts, homicide finishes.
Federal officials were looking at Tina's father for another reason: suspicion over ties to terrorism, resulting in 2 bugs being planted inside the family's home.
If there is proof that the house was bugged and they knew that there were threats made against this child, why didn't they go there and save her life?
But the FBI bugs couldn't save Tina's life because they weren't live and no agents were listening in.
Because this wasn't a regular wiretap where they have to listen 24/7 or they can't admit it into court, these were done on reels. So, an agent could come in, take out the last reel, pop in a new one. So could it have been prevented? Child abuse could have prevented it. The hotline, the FBI might have been able to save her. They could have called the city police, juvenile, and said, "Get that kid out of here."
Those FBI tapes allowed in court and played in front of the jury.
On the witness stand this morning, speaking through a translator, Zane Issa admitted to the jury he stabbed his daughter to death.
It was horrifying. It really was. Really horrifying. The screams and the moans. It was devastating.
When you listen to this tape, you just want to get away. And you know she's not going to get away.
I don't even know how to describe how I felt. I don't think I've ever felt that way before. It was terrible. I just sitting there and I'm listening to one of my good friends being murdered. I mean, it was terrible.
Tina knows she's dying, and she knows that this is not going to end well for her. And it's just the terror in the voice and the knowledge that your life is just about to end. And it's clear. It's clear in her voice, and it's clear in her struggle. Many of the jurors either put their hands up to their head to kind of cover their ears even though they had the headphones on. Some of them took their headphones off. But that didn't relieve them of anything because they're still going to hear it because it's being played live.
I could not listen to that tape. Reading the transcript, it was, as the police will tell you, excessive overkill.
The tapes were key to prosecutors who didn't have a case without them.
You don't have enough evidence because the only 2 witnesses are telling you that it's self-defense. And the physical evidence right now looks like self-defense. Unequivocally, we could not have won.
Prosecutors painted a picture of the family's cultural divide in the trial.
We are a melting pot, and I know it sounds trite, but Charlie Shaw said, east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet. And I said, no, that's not true. In this country, they do meet, and we accommodate all cultures, but we accommodate them under our law.
In a couple of weeks, I think December 3rd, she would have turned 17. And under Missouri law then, she could move out of the house and do whatever she wanted. And they knew it, and she knew it.
There are items on the tapes that indicated that they believed once she turned 17, they didn't have the legal right to control her here in the United States.
They had checked the law, and they had to kill her because she wouldn't be under her father's control.
The murder became known as an honor killing, with Tina's parents angry at her for resisting Islamic traditions, bringing shame and dishonor to the family.
She shamed him, and the only way he could reestablish his honor and his family's honor, and it's tribal, was to kill her, you know, and her shedding her blood washed away her sins.
She's not acting the way we want her to act, and if she won't act that way, she is shaming us. And Mr. Issa needs to put an end to this because it's shaming the family.
The Bug also shined light on a darker look into the family dynamic. Some of Tina's own sisters siding with Zane in phone calls before the murder.
October 14th, after a daughter suggests hiring someone to kill Tina, Zane is quoted as saying, "I don't accept. It is necessary that I do this."
Zane and his daughters had been discussing this for weeks.
They were very anti-Tina, said it's got to be taken care of now and do whatever you need to do to take care of it. She's making us look bad. You're looking weak. You've got to take care of it. If we were in the old country, we could put her in a box and bury her. Nobody'd miss her. We could chain her up in the basement. Nobody'd miss her.
It's Cinderella. The sisters, all of them, were married off when they were young, like 16 or so. And Zane Issa basically kind of picked out the husband. Tina rejected that. And things were fine until she turned 14 and she really wanted to have more of an American life. She snuck out to go to prom, and then her sister would rat her out because the sisters were resentful. But at the same time, they adored her.
Zane's family defending him in court.
I feel that the jury did not see all the evidence they're supposed to see. I feel there was more evidence that they did not show to the jury.
Maria also supporting Zane following the conviction.
And she said, you know, my husband was a good man, and he's always been a good man, and this girl was out of control, and my husband did nothing wrong, and he did what he had to do, and all you did is kill a really good man.
Even in her trials, Maria would not talk badly about Zane because he was a good provider. She had enough to eat. She was so brainwashed.
We reached out to some of Tina's surviving family who declined to comment. The terrorism investigation was information prosecutors didn't have before the murder trial.
The federal authorities called a news conference and said, we've indicted Zane Issa and 2 of his nephews and a third party. And he was the head of the Abu Nidal terrorist organization in the Midwest.
ANO was considered the worst terrorist organization by the State Department, the worst.
The government said Zane and 3 others were plotting terror attacks.
The defendants are recorded on 7,000 reels of audio tape, 25,000 hours worth of listening. On one of those tapes, Zane Issa is discussing activities of the Abu Nidal organization, saying terrorists here could kill 3,000 Jews, and young people should be trained to, quote, hit people and slaughter.
Conspiracy to murder Jews, a discussion on blowing up the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C.
And the government claimed Tina was murdered because she knew too much.
The FBI says the girl's parents killed her because she threatened to report the terrorist activities to police.
Zane was indicted in the terrorist plot, but charges were dropped after he went to prison. The others sentenced to just 21 months behind bars. The FBI released a statement to us saying, quote, when the FBI becomes aware of information that can assist our law enforcement partners in solving a crime or protecting the public, we make it a priority to share it. While the FBI never said exactly how real the threat from Zane was, there was a very real one to his daughter. Zane and Maria were sentenced to death in 1991.
It took a little more than 3 hours to find Maria and Zane Issa guilty of first-degree murder in the stabbing death of their 16-year-old daughter, Palestina.
I just felt so happy for Tina's sake that they were found guilty because, I don't know, I can't explain it, but my heart was pounding so hard, and I was shaking, and when they said they were guilty, I just started crying. I was so relieved.
A sense of relief from a senseless crime. Tina's friends, all forever, remembering her as the joyful person she was.
It wasn't my decision what the punishment was. The jury decided what they should get. I think what they decided is right.
Both Zane and Maria died in prison. Maria's death sentence was later overturned on appeal, in part because of questionable jury instructions. She died of natural causes in 2014. Zane died before his death sentence could be overturned. He died after a long illness in 1997. Tina now lies buried at Sacred Heart Cemetery in Florissant, a girl with a life full of promise, cut short by her own parents.
She really was a remarkable human being.